Can I, before I start in great detail, thank the organizers for inviting me all this way over the oceans to be with you today. I've had a wonderful time and extraordinary level of hospitality, which is truly appreciated. So thank you. I actually had an airplane ride where I was rested. I could actually put my feet up. It was lovely. So thank you very much. I've been asked to talk to you this afternoon about words beginning with C. And those words are culture, creativity, critical thinking, and curriculum. So, without much more ado, I hope to talk about those things with you. Okay, so let's get going. The quality of knowledge matters, but this gives us huge problems because we have to think which is the good knowledge, the best knowledge to teach, and which isn't. And this goes back to this man here with the wonderful facial hair. This is Matthew Arnold, who was the first inspector of schools in England. And he talks about culture being the best that has been thought and said and known in the world. Now, this is enshrined now in the English national curriculum. In England, you have to teach the best that has been known and said and thought in the world. You have to teach the best. So, here we go. We're going to look at the best. And I'm trying to give you an idea of it from a South American perspective. So, here is the best. Okay? Are we happy with the best? Yeah, quickly talk to the person next to you. You're happy that the best capital city in South America is Buenos Aires, for example? Yeah? No? Oh, that's made me popular. Rio? Okay. But if I'm teaching you the best, and I'm saying this is the best to know, and I want you to learn it as the best, because I want you to know the best, I want you to feel it's the best. I say, in England, perhaps Shakespeare is the best. Yeah? So here is the best, and here's his best play, here's the best character, here's the best speech. I want you to know it, learn it, remember it. But what happens? Hannah Arendt talks about this. And I have a visual for this very thing. This is a Victorian theatre in London's West End. And if you go to the theatre, the best seats are in the what we call the dress circle, near the front, in the centre, or row J or K in the stalls. But where did the culture snobs sit? They sit here in these boxes where they can't really see the play, but the audience can see them at the play. So they're not actually engaging in culture. They're engaged in the performativity of culture. Here I am. Aren't I posh? Haven't I got good taste? So this is the whole problem with teaching the best. Saying it's the best is then someone can put the best on and say, I now am here, this is the best, I know the best. Because you're not really engaged with it. So, I want you to talk to the person next to you here and decide which is the best cup of coffee. Okay, off you go. 1 minute. And stop now. Now, some of you might say D4. D4 is the best cup of coffee there. But you'd be wrong, because that's milk. But you can see that we have this sort of critical thing that's going on here, that we think the best might be slightly different than someone else's best. But I've got to teach you which is the best cup of coffee. Some of you will know this was all a trick, of course, because I'm English, and that's all tea. Which, as we know, is better than coffee. So, which is the best? Now, Now, I am here for 2 days. 2 days in Santiago. Which is the best thing for me to experience of those three? I've got time for one. There is one of those that I don't want to go anywhere near, by the way. You might guess which one that is. But which one should it be? You want to give me a taste of Chile? It has to be one of those three things. The best for me to taste. Decide. Off you go. Okay. And this is just food and drink. Yeah? What happens when we get to literature? Which is the best? I don't know what any of them are, by the way. Which would be the best there? And again, if you're teaching children about the best literature, what do you want them to experience? Which are the books you're going to teach? They say in England, for the majority of children, in terms of the novels they read, for quite a sizable number, the last novel they read was at the age of 16, and the rest of their life they hardly touch novels of great English literature or anything like that. So which novels should they read at school? But this all comes down to the subjective view and trying to bring the subjective together with a certain idea that some things are better than other things. How do we bring perspective into play? And Kevin Mitchell here talks about the importance of the subjective to learning. The subjective experience determines whether we learn from something and how it shapes our future behavior. So our subjective ideas on things is very important for whether we're going to learn from it, understand it, feel it. And how we look out on the world is vital. So it's not just information coming in, it's how we view that information when it's coming to us. Or another way of putting it, knowledge comes to us imbued by our way of knowing it. So in front of you, you have children. And you want them to look out upon the world as sensitive, thoughtful, gentle human beings, looking out upon the world, saying, look at all this magnificence, this sublime, beautiful view. But when I was in England, in front of me, in the classroom, was this. And how do you bring that into the discussion? How do you bring that to think about things and to say what they think? And if we just say it's the best, this is the best, and we tell that to him, he can switch off. It's not the best. I don't like it. So if we say culture is about the best, then we're not going to get to them. But that's because Matthew Arnold was wrong about culture. Culture is not about the best. Culture is everything. It's how we see the world around us. It's belief, arts, morals, law, customs, the way we live together in the world. And this is Edward B. Tyler, who was writing at the same time as Matthew Arnold, and he had a totally different view to culture. And this view became anthropology, a way of looking at other cultures, but not perhaps our own. But of course, it is the way we look at our own culture as well. Simon Critchley here talking about Heidegger's view, the world is part of who I am. So part of who I am, the way I look at the world and feel about the world and understand the world, is part of my identity, my character, my values, my beliefs. If I am Catholic, I perhaps see the world different to an atheist sees the world. And this brings the problem as well, because if we say this is the way that the world is, this is culture, this is our coming together, what happens if we argue with that and we have differences with it? If we see ourselves as excluded from the culture in which we're in, for whatever reason, in this case because she is a woman, she sees herself as excluded from it. Do we change the culture? Do we fight to change the culture? And yet, it's a paradox, because the very thing she admires in the culture is its continuity. The way it keeps things going, keeps us thinking, keeps us together. So there's a problem here with criticality, in that I can come along and be critical and destroy the very thing that I'm being critical about. So I have to be careful with it. And as teachers, we have to be careful when we bring critical thinking into the classroom. So if I teach you something and you tell me back, that's not what it's about. I teach you something, but you're looking at me and I'm looking at you and I'm bringing you into the conversation with me. But if I start to ask you your opinion on something, you might tell me. And at that point, you might destroy the very thing I'm trying to teach. I can introduce a new poem to a class and ask them, what do you think of this? And they tell me, it's shit. And then this beautiful poem is destroyed straight away. And depending who said it, if it was her or him at the back, the rest of the class might go, yeah, it's shit. So I don't want to do that. I don't want to ask them their opinions. Don't ask children their opinions, because they might tell you. And you don't want that to happen. You don't want that to happen, because the shock of the new, you see something new, your defense mechanism kicks in, and it is, I don't like it. And how did I learn this? Selling double glazing windows from door to door. When you do sales, they teach you never to ask anyone a question where there can be a no answer. Always give them choice. So instead of saying, do you like windows? No. you ask, do you like windows that open like that or like that? And they go, oh, just like that. And you think, great, I'm now going to sell windows. So, don't ask them their opinion. Critical thinking is about giving them choices to start thinking about things. Do you like this? Do you like this? Putting things together, side by side. Now, this way, we build up from novice to expert critical thinkers through an engagement with knowledge, with knowing things, with seeing things that contrast and compare. This is better than this. This is better than this. We see things in that way. So then we educate them to be critical thinkers. They're actually being critical about something, thinking about something. This works in art. I'm trying to make them draw and to think about what they're drawing, to come up with a critical idea about whether they're drawing well or not, but they sketch it in different ways, different styles, different things of thinking about it, and then look at it critically. Which one is best? Which one have I done well? Has this worked better than that? And football as well. I don't know if you're aware, but this was invented in England, this game. And this was how I was taught football. It was always raining, by the way. And we'd go out onto the pitch, and there we were, little boys, because it was only boys who learnt football when I was at school. Little boys, big pitch, full-size pitch, little boys. And they would take the slightly larger boys, who were very good-looking, on either side, who would then pick teams. Yes, I am the sporty one. I am going to pick a team. And they pick one side, the other side, all the way across. And left behind the smallest, weediest, most useless footballers were left. They were the goalkeepers. And there they are, put into goal. There he is. This is Billy Casper, by the way. And there he is in goal. And then we were given a full-size football. And it was put in the middle of the pitch. And then the PE teacher would blow the whistle. And we'd run, kick, and run down a full-size pitch. And we'd be getting tireder and tireder. And there were some parents. I love this. Where was that? There were some parents on the side of the football pitch shouting and swearing at the children. Kick him, have him, and things like that. You can do it. Yeah, fight, and all this. And that's how the English learnt to play football. And this is why we've only won the World Cup once, in 1966. But we have attitude and passion. But we weren't taught it in the way. There's a place called South America. I don't know if you're aware of it. But in South America, they seem to have this other way of playing football that involved not just hoofing the ball and knocking it into the goal or whatever, but a different way of playing it. And it transpires that they've thought it through, that novices should be taught differently than experts. You can't put people on a full-size football pitch right from day one. You can actually learn football in a completely different way. Things like passing the ball become important. The ball is smaller, doesn't bounce so well, it's quite heavy. And all these things start to make football a game of artistry from a very young age. And this is why we teach novices differently than experts. We don't start on the full-size pitch for football, and we shouldn't start it for critical thinking or creativity or any subject. We should never start it on the full-size pitch. We should always start it slowly and thoughtfully, building up the ways of seeing the world and being in the world. And this, if you like, in curriculum terms, is joining it up. We join it up. We start from one point and we end up somewhere else. And we build up the skills as we go and the knowledge as we go. When my daughter was at primary school, she was taught joined up writing. And the first teacher who taught her how to do this. And this teacher was from Spain, okay? Then my daughter goes to year 1 the next year, and she is taught by a different teacher who doesn't care about joined up writing. She just does printing, separate letters. And then she goes to the next class, and she's taught joined up writing again, but by a different teacher. And this teacher is from Poland, who has great insights into joined up writing, which are totally different than the teacher from Spain. It's a different system of cursive writing. So my daughter has been at school for 3 years, the first 3 years of moving from novice to expert in joined up writing, but has been taught 3 completely different ways of doing joined up writing. So the curriculum issue here is joining it up, literally. How do you join up the curriculum so it starts from novice and becomes more expert as time goes by? And the same with critical thinking, the same with creativity, the same with all these things. We need to build up the knowledge base so children can take part and think and do as time goes by. So we need agreed vision for progress through the curriculum. It's the way we do things here. The whole culture comes together. Teaching is moving and holding the baton and moving it to the next teacher and passing it on, referring forwards and backwards. The whole of teaching throughout school is knowing what the next teacher's going to teach and knowing what the teacher taught before as well. And this starts to pull together the whole culture of teaching. So we teach them something, we want them to think about it, but we teach them personally about it as well, and they're personally coming into the conversation, slowly building up their way of seeing the world and moving through it. So we take their experience, we add knowledge, and we put knowledge in such a way as to build up their powers of judgment. Now I'm going to go through a few slides here because you were late, so I can't go through those. So I'm going to go through that. There we go. But the way we can then do that is that we can interleave the things we're teaching. We can interleave the things we're teaching to them. So we put one thing next to another thing, and the pupils are able to discriminate better, which is best, like we did with the coffee, which turned out to be tea. We can juxtapose things. That's next to that. A classic one is cat and dog. I put cat there and dog there, and you can learn these two things at the same time, and you can learn what's similar and what's different. Even my dog knows the difference between a cat and a dog. So it's not too difficult at all. That's because my dog has been taught through juxtaposition. So we can have a Monet next to a Van Gogh or a Picasso or something. Well, here we go. Which is which? Quickly tell the person next to you which is which. Now, there's a Monet, a Van Gogh, and a Picasso. Now, if we teach children just one of those, they're not going to learn much about it. If we teach them together, They can start seeing things differently. It might be that you've never seen that Van Gogh, for example, but you knew it was a Van Gogh because you're aware of the style of it and how it's different than other things, different than other pictures. So you've learnt it critically, and you can then decide also which is more successful as a painting and why that might be. You can also start to bring yourself, your subjective judgment into that and saying, I can see why that's good, but I prefer this because. And you start to bring in your critical awareness and thinking about it. When I taught theatre, I taught these three people. And this is Bertolt Brecht, Konstantin Stanislavski, and Antonin Artaud. Okay, now I'm just going to give you a quick lesson on these things, how I used to teach them. Because you could just teach one of them, which is all the exam asked for. You could teach two of them, but I taught three. Why? I don't know. Madness, probably. But the other thing is, you can teach in such a way that in the same amount of time they learn more quickly because they start to see what you're talking about. I'm just going to give you a quick lesson in staging. Now, Stanislavski, his view of truth is it has to look real. So here we have the fourth wall. And we have actors on the stage and they talk to each other. And if it's a Chekhov play, they can look out over here. And they look out over the lake or they look at the moon. But they never look at you. But Bertolt Brecht, he says, get rid of this fourth wall. Yeah? And he's a Marxist revolutionary. And he stares at the audience and he puts his fist in the air and says, comrades, this is the battle, this is the fight. And so he uses staging completely differently. The fourth wall has gone, he breaks it. Antonin Artaud forgets this stage completely, gets rid of it. He puts himself bang into the center of the audience. Yeah, and he screams and shouts and covers you in bodily fluids. Yeah, so you feel stuff. So we have three different ways of seeing the world. We have it looks true, it looks real, or we have actually the way you see the world isn't real at all. It's a socialist, Marxist revolution is needed because of the power. The people have power. We need to abuse this power and get rid of them and all this sort of stuff. And Artaud says, no. Puts himself in the center and says, it's about feeling. It's a spiritual truth. You can't put it into words. It's a metaphysical truth. So you put those three things together and you see the world differently. So in order to be creative, we need to make critical judgments. We need to know stuff. We need to feel stuff. We need to decide which is best for us, not just be taught what the best is, but make these choices for ourselves. And Steve Jobs would only employ people at Apple who could make these choices, who could make these choices. He would only employ people who were great at computing, but were also liberal arts graduates who could play cellos and paint and write poetry and things like that. And here's a story about one of them called Johnny Ive. And Johnny Ive was educated in London. And his dad was an inspector of schools for design and technology. And his dad used to take him to school and they would talk about designs. Oh, look at that phone box. Look at that. Is that more beautiful than that phone box, or is that phone box more beautiful than that phone box? And they would decide and choose. And he built up this huge body of knowledge. Well, Steve Jobs was working for Pixar. He left Apple, and he's working for Pixar. And he came back to Apple when they were bordering on bankruptcy. They were falling apart. And so he went there. And Steve Wozniak, who built Apple with Steve Jobs, was driving it into the ground. And they said, look, we've got to get rid of staff and all this sort of thing. And he said, well, what about this chap here? Oh, he's going, he's rubbish. And it was Johnny Ive. And he said, no, hang on a minute, this guy has something. And he says to Johnny Ive, come in. Talk to me about design. And Johnny Ive tells him about his education, his knowledge of design, which was superb. And Steve Jobs says, well, could you do something about this? Does anyone here remember that? Put up your hand. Put up your hand if you remember that. Right, look around you. These are the old people. They've got their hands up. Now, this Sony Walkman was a problem because Sony had given up on it, because people had given up using it because they had the cassettes around with them, or the CD for the Sony Discman, all those things. They thought about putting a chip into it, but they said, no, it's finished. No one's going to carry around music and listen to it in their headphones anymore. Apple pounced on this. We're going to put a chip in here. Johnny, could you design me the best possible package to put this chip into? And Johnny said, well, I know a lot about design, and I also know that the best designs in the world are made by Braun in Germany. And he said, right, because I know this stuff, I can use what I know. I've made the critical thinking, I've thought about it, this is better than this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to create something new. Well, perhaps he did. That's a Braun transistor radio from the 1960s. Now, Johnny Ive said, this is what we need to base it on. Here is the future by looking into the past. And he designed from that, which is the classic iPod, the first iPod that was made. And there you can see his knowledge, his critical thinking, his creativity was based on him knowing something, making a critical judgment about Braun being the best. And it's not like he only did this once, by the way. I mean, he does this quite a lot. Those are all Braun products next to Apple products. That one up the top, so the iMac, that's a Braun speaker, a hi-fi speaker. And you can see the similarity of design. So you need knowledge to think about it. You need to think what's best and what isn't best, which one's better than which. Put them together and come up with your own viewpoint. And then you can be creative. Creativity, critical thinking, rooted in knowledge. And therefore, the curriculum is not teaching them the best. It's about students coming into the conversation about what the best might be. Thank you very much.